Hello, I'm Jeff Gold, and thanks so much for being with us today. I have the pleasure and the honor of being joined by Dr. Ann Anderson-Berry, who is now the president of the UNMC Faculty Senate. And Ann has assumed this great responsibility not only in a faculty leadership role here, but also to serve as the faculty representative to the Board of Regents. And being I can't join you today for this Faculty Senate meeting, I thought it would be good to have a conversation about some of the events that are going on across our campus and across the university. At the same time, if I could just take an extra minute to thank Dr. Nazar Wiebe for all of his tremendous leadership and the collaboration that we've had over the last year. I really appreciate all the hard work, Nazar, and the things that we were able to accomplish together. In speaking with Dr. Wiebe and Dr. Anderson-Berry, I thought rather than my just holding forth and recording a brief message for you, it would probably be more interesting and probably more effective if Ann could just ask me some questions that are not only on her mind, but are on the minds of our faculty. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to you and let's talk about anything that you wish.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gold. It's really a nice opportunity to have this time to clarify some issues that are on the minds of people on campus here at UNMC. In particular, I think the faculty is concerned about the upcoming two-year budget. And we are wondering what, if any, impact you foresee on the UNMC campus in particular, given the state appropriations to the university have decreased significantly for the next two-year period?
Well, this is something that we've all been involved with literally almost for the last year. It was last summer that we first got some inclination that there'd be some holdback. The legislative resolution that was passed in January reducing our current year budget system-wide by $13 million. And at the end of this entire legislative session, where we've ended up, given our uncontrollable costs, meaning the cost of floor wax and light bulbs and utilities, a very modest increment in salaries and benefits, the estimates are just under $50 million of costs that will have to be absorbed. And the only way those costs can really be absorbed are through a combination of reductions in expenses, budget cuts, through the use of increasing revenue, which includes grants, contracts, and tuition, and through the use of cash, meaning reducing the cash reserves across the university system. So the way this is ultimately played out is that we, over the course of the biennium, will reduce approximately $27 million of expenses between 27 and 30. We'll use about $10 million of cash, and the rest will be absorbed through tuition. So as recently as the June 1st meeting of the Board of Regents, the board has agreed to a little bit more than a 5% across the board increase in in-state and non-in-state tuition for the first year, and a little bit more than 3% for the second year of the biennium. And by the way, that's an estimate that's going to have to be revisited in the future. So the concern that all of us have, and I'm sure our faculty, our staff, our students probably have, is of the $27 million of reductions that are going to occur over the next 2 years, what is that going to mean to the programs, to the colleges, to the centers of excellence here at the Med Center and at other campuses? The best way to answer that, I think, is that over the last 6 months, approximately, President Bounds has set up 10 budget response teams that have focused on non-academic, non-educational, non-research areas. So that's included things like human relations, HR. It's included things like information technology, business and finance, security services, travel, facilities, energy, things along those lines. And each of those budget response teams came forward with a plan as to how they could reduce expenditures in those specific areas and do the least amount of impact to our programs, so that we're not talking about closing colleges, closing campuses, reducing outreach programs, etc. And altogether, they came forward with about $47 million worth of potential expense reductions, budget cuts. And there's a steering committee that was set up by the president, in which I had the honor of representing the chancellors, Regent Bob Whitehouse represented the Board of Regents. It was quite a great group of people. And we thought that of the $47 million proposal, somewhere between $25 and $30 million was reasonable, that would cause the least discomfort, that would cause the least enduring impact on all of our campuses. So what's unclear at this point is, of the $27 million reductions that are necessary over the next 2 years, how much of that will occur at UNO, how much will occur at UNL, how much will occur at UNK, central administration, here at the Med Center, and a lot depends upon the consolidations and the standardizations. But for instance, instead of having 4 HR departments, we're probably going to end up with one central coordinated HR function that would have outreach into all of the campuses across the university system. And we're of course going through the same thing in information technology services. We're going to be looking at printing, we're going to be looking at travel. And in many regards, the Med Center has been pretty much ahead of the game in that we have looked at these considerations, working very carefully with Vice Chancellor Deb Thomas of Business and Finance. We've been planning for these types of reductions now for the better part of a year, understanding it. I guess that would be a summary of how I think this is going to play out. But in truth, between now and the end of this academic year, the very beginning of the next, we'll have a much more finite understanding of what that would mean to position control, what that would mean to employment. Are individuals going to lose jobs, have jobs changed, be moved from one responsibility to another? I think I would be less than honest if I said it wasn't going to affect people and their careers. But every attempt will be made to be open and transparent and as thoughtful and caring about this as possible. And every opportunity to use attrition and retirements as a means of achieving these goals, but also every opportunity to move people from one role to another if we're reducing in one area, and to use their skill sets and their knowledge and experience as effectively as possible.
Great. I have a couple follow-up questions. The
Sure.
first is about the tuition increases. What measures are being taken to decrease the impact on the financially at-risk student with these tuition increases?
Well, there's a commitment that we made when we looked at the differential tuition on this campus, that any increase in tuition that we brought on, and this is for only incoming students, not existing students, would be associated with an exactly proportional increase in financial aid, scholarship, tuition discounts, collectively what we call tuition remissions. And I'm very proud to say that when the Board of Regents approved the increase in tuition, they also were very, very careful that the package included a similar proportionate increase so that the most disadvantaged students who are struggling, and talking to a first-generation college student here, were it not for scholarships, work study, and things along those lines, student loans, I would never have had that opportunity. So we will do our very best to be sure that that remains core to our mission. Affordability is a pillar of the university's approach to our educational programs. And interestingly, there was a graphic that was shared with the Board of Regents that looked at our tuition after all of the tuition increases, campus by campus, comparing us to our peers. And we're still either at the bottom or maybe one up from the bottom. So we still remain a very affordable institution. And more than just being affordable, the value proposition is absolutely there, because I am well aware we have spectacular educational programs. So high impact, high quality, affordable, to me equals high value.
Excellent. What impact is all this going to have on faculty recruitment? We need to recruit top faculty to maintain excellence and our world reputation.
Well, as we sit here today, I'm not sure whether it would have any impact. Certainly we're going to rethink the recruitment of every faculty, every new program, and look carefully at the academic value of that recruitment and look carefully at the economic impact of that recruitment. But the truth again is pretty simple, that at least over my three and a half years here, every recruitment has been framed from a position of what's the academic impact, and also what will it cost, what's the return on that investment, and what sources can we use to make sure that we don't disappoint the faculty. You know, one of my highest commitments is when we recruit a faculty member and we commit to either a startup package or space or renovation or whatever it may be, that I want to be 100% sure we deliver on that. And that is core to me. If it comes down to we recruit several fewer faculty members during a year, but can live up to all of the commitments for the faculty we have recruited and continue to recruit, that is very important to me.
Okay. We're building a lot on this campus. We continue to see buildings in the campus grow, and we have wonderful spaces like the Buffett Cancer Center that just opened.
We do.
I think that there are questions regarding the funding for these new spaces when state appropriations are down and we have a budget deficit. Can you speak to the funding sources of these buildings and clarify that for our faculty?
Sure, absolutely. And I get asked that question a whole lot. Why are you building buildings if the state budget is in such fragile shape? And the answer is pretty simple, that we have to maintain the quality of the facilities on this campus, or we will not be able to recruit and retain the best and the brightest faculty, staff, and of course be an attraction to students. But equally importantly to that is that a very significant percentage of the construction is either paid for by one-time state capital or paid for by the private sector, the businesses and philanthropists of the community. So if you think about it, we have millions and millions of dollars of deferred maintenance. I mean, probably between $150 and $200 million of deferred maintenance on this campus right now. And were it not for the businesses and private philanthropists of this community, it would be very difficult to replace all of those facilities. Mm-hmm. And we're really very lucky because, you know, let's take the Cancer Center, for instance. The Cancer Center, $90 million of public money for a total of about a $350 million project. I mean, that results in just an incredible gift to the campus. Now, we have to operate and maintain the Cancer Center, which we will, but that'll be a revenue producing between research grants and contracts and other things. That's really very exciting and you know, a net positive. So we will continue to do that. We're obviously going to be thoughtful and strategic about it, but this is a time that we need to be sure that we encourage the private sector to continue to invest in the community. And by the way, they want a return on that investment too, but they don't want it in dollars and cents. They want it in lives saved, students educated, research breakthroughs, clinical care, you know, for the Med Center, and that's where we really deliver and return that investment.
Great. Okay, so you have been tackling the dual chancellorship of UNMC and UNO in planning and in actuality for a little over a month now.
Right.
How is that going? And can you speak a little bit to the transition team that you have put in place to help you? What's their scope of work? Have they gotten started yet? A few updates.
So the answer to your question is it's been sort of like drinking out of a fire hose. Mm-hmm. And as the days go by, I am increasingly excited about it. I was quite excited to start. It seemed like a great opportunity, a way to leverage the strengths of both of these great universities. And as I've met more and more people in the UNO family, I am really impressed with the quality, the dedication, the school spirit, and frankly, the opportunities. One of the things that's happened is Dr. B.J. Reed, who's Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at UNO, and Dr. Deli Davies, who's our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, have worked together to produce a very long list of existing collaborative programs, some of which have been in place for a long period of time, some of which are relatively new, some of which are actually ideas that have spontaneously come forward just in the last several weeks. And so it's been an amazing process. Now, to your question about the transition teams, there are actually two. One was well, maybe play the clock back just for a second. When President Bounds announced that he asked me to assume this responsibility, he and I both also announced that we would form a transition process and we'd be listening to faculty and students and staff and the community to try to learn about ways to make this transition more effective, more efficient. And so we sent a message out to the UNO campus and asked if there's anybody who was willing to volunteer some time to serve. Well, hundreds of people said, yeah, I'd love to do that. Similarly, there's been input from our campus here at UNMC. There's been input from the private community as well, from elected members of the unicameral legislature, etc. And so we have established two. We've established a Transition Advisory Council, which is 25 approximately people that will meet, I hope, 5 times. And then there's a Transition Advisory Team, which is going to be several hundred people that will meet several times also, hopefully between now and Thanksgiving holiday is what I'm hoping, to try to not only help me go through this transition period, to educate me, to make me more aware of some of the challenges and opportunities, but also to think through where the University of Nebraska at Omaha really is today. You know, as I framed the thinking about this, I think of it in terms of the Admiral Jim Stockdale approach to leadership, which is face the blatant truth, but stay focused on the horizon. So what I want to hear is, where's the horizon in education, in research, in community engagement, in growth, in quality, etc. And then, where are we? What is the blatant truth? And how can we leverage the relationship between the Med Center and UNO most effectively? You know, before my first day, I actually went out to one of the local convenience stores and I bought some glue, some metal welding glue. Then I found a paper fastener and I glued these two lapel pins together in a very thoughtful way, in the sense that I didn't want them glued together so that they overlapped. I didn't want them glued together in a way that they would lose their individual brand identity, but I did want them glued together so that they didn't come apart, so that they were solid and didn't fall off my coat, but more importantly, symbolically, that they maintain their individual brand identity, which is critical, but at the same time are strengthened by each other. And I'm hoping that that's the approach that will be most effective.
As incoming Faculty Senate President, it might not surprise you that I've had multiple people approach me from the faculty with questions and concerns about this process. And I spoke to you yesterday about setting up a committee between the two faculty senates, UNO and UNMC, with faculty representatives to just deal with issues that might come through this process that would affect or impact faculty. Can you comment on how that would be received from your office?
I think it would be received as a phenomenal contribution. I'm really excited, and Laura, who leads the Faculty Senate at UNO, and I have talked about this concept as well, and I know she's really excited about participating in this process. The more communication that occurs, the better this is going to be. You know, I'm one of these people who believes that if you provide the right forum for people to get together, to get to know each other, that caring, thoughtful people will do great things. And I am convinced, I've had multiple meetings with the leadership of Faculty Senate on the UNO campus. I've actually had the opportunity to be invited to attend their executive committee meeting not too long ago, and really impressed with the dedication and the thoughtfulness. Of course there's concern, and I get that. I mean, there's concern at UNO, there's concern here at the Med Center. I have my own concerns. You know, there are only 24 hours in the day, and there's a lot of opportunity here. But I still think the benefits of bringing these two institutions and aligning the academic programs to the best we can and doing the back of the house combinations and integrations will be a way of building a very, very strong future. You know, I get asked the question all the time, well, are you really thinking about a merger? And I don't happen to like that word, and the reason I don't like it is because in 1968, when the legislature created the University of Nebraska system, that was done by an act of the unicameral signed by the governor, and UNL, UNO, and UNMC became one agency of the state, Agency 51 as it's known. And Agency 51 has one state subsidy, has one president, has one board of regents, is audited in a singular way. It has multiple campuses, multiple brand identities. But this separation between UNO and UNMC are fundamental to the mission. They each have very different missions. Of course, we serve the stakeholders, we serve the communities of the state and of the region, but we have multiple different brand identities, and all of that is critical to be maintained. It's just a question to me of how we can build pipeline academic programs, research collaboration, etc. So for instance, right now, the ability for two research scientists at UNO and UNMC to work together and be co-PIs on a federally funded grant is extremely difficult. It's not clear how indirect cost recovery would be managed in that way. And those are some of the things that we can solve. We can get to an understanding of how that would occur so that we don't have to reinvent it every time two people want to come together and collaborate on research. If there's a course a student here wants to take at UNO, right now the logistics of cross-registering are extremely complex. And I'd like to make that really easy. And by the way, I'd like to do the same thing for UNL and UNK. But right now, doing it here in Omaha, 2 miles apart, seems to make the most sense.
That does make a lot of sense. One final question, and then we should probably wrap this up.
Sure.
There are concerns about fundraising. We talked about the building expenditures and how they are often funded by private sources. And UNMC has been on a phenomenal trajectory. UNO is growing and having wonderful programmatic growth. How are you going to be able to balance fundraising for two institutions and making sure that everyone's needs get met?
Well, the most important part of philanthropic development fundraising is to understand the wishes, the experiences, the vision of the philanthropists, the foundations, the individual donors, etc. People invest in programs, in individuals that they're really proud of and that they want to see successful. They invest where their passion is. And so I don't see it at all as competitive. Frankly, I can tell you, having met with a number of the prominent donors and foundations in the community, they are really excited about this. Their comments to me are, what took so long? Why didn't you folks do this in the past? And they see a new opportunity for investment in the synergies. In other words, what it take to bring new resources, to build those pipeline programs, to connect those research scientists, to take the biomechanics program, for instance, at UNO and marry it up to some of the clinical programs here, which exist today. But the opportunity to expand that is really exciting. So I actually see this as not a question of how to redivide a pie, but I see this as an opportunity to make this a much more exciting opportunity for the foundations and for the philanthropists of this community. And as long as I'm on the subject, we owe an incredible amount, both on the UNO side and on the UNMC side, to the private philanthropic community. The public-private partnerships, whether they're in the Community Engagement Center at UNO, or whether they're in athletics, or whether they're here at the Cancer Center or in the iExcel Global Center, without their investments in our future would never exist. And so we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to them, and they are excited.
Excellent. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Safe travels on Monday, and hopefully we'll see you in September at our next meeting.
You will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to join you today.